So joining me now are the co-writers of Generation Joker, Katana Collins and Clay McCormack. How are you both?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks for taking a moment out of your time or your busy schedules, giving me the time to come on here and talk. Clay has been on the show before, so I've gotten to put him in the hot seat. But Katana, since this is your first time on the show, I have to ask you, what is your favorite Batman story?
There's a hot seat. You didn't
Yes.
tell me there's gonna be a hot seat.
I can't give a warning because then it's not a hot seat, I guess. It's like it's
Ah,
just a seat, I guess.
okay,
So
wait.
pressure's
Repeat the
on.
question.
Favorite, what's your favorite Batman story?
This is just going to be all questions for you, Katana. I'm just going to stare at you the whole time.
There you go.
I mean, story as in like graphic novel that's out there, or
Whatever you want it to be. Movies have scripts which count as written media, so those count as well. And somebody's actually gone that route before, and I've asked them this question.
okay. I gosh, I would probably have to say because it was my first introduction to Batman, the animated series.
Okay.
The episode, I might get the title wrong. Is it Crazy Love, Clay?
Mad Love?
Mad Love, thank you. Yes. That
You,
is probably my
you know,
favorite.
that counts on a few levels because it's an animated series and of course the comic, which was written by, Paul Dini, who wrote the episode and all that stuff. So it all counts. Mad Love. There you go. That counts. Yeah. That works. And I think that's extremely fitting considering how you're known to a lot of comic book readers and stuff too. Clay, do you remember by chance what you answered?
No, not at all.
No.
I'm gonna assume it was probably Tim Burton's Batman. If I had to, if I was gonna,
no, you said Digital Justice. I'm kidding. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I actually know that book.
You know
That's
that
the
book,
one
okay?
that was the one that was entirely one of the first digital comics, right? Done
That's
entirely
right.
with
Yeah.
computers. Yeah.
Haven't talked about it on here yet, but one of these days, because it has a reputation. I don't think it's as terrible as people think. But you went with Dark Knight Returns, and then you even said Year One slobbed into it, and I think you felt like that was a cop out answer. But I said no, it's people answer that for reasons. Those are good. Those are good stories. So
I would also put Tim Burton's Batman in there as well.
Well, there you go. That counts. All right, we got it. Well, we've covered the hard stuff. I swear it's easy from here on out. So yeah, no hot takes or anything. So let's get to talking to Generation Joker. And a lot of times when it comes to stuff like this, so the first issue drops on Tuesday. I was fortunate enough, I've gotten to read it so far, thoroughly enjoyed it. Whether you two are on here or not, I'd say the same thing. So it's not just, sucking up of
thank you.
that I didn't. And I actually did. Yes. Thank you. I want to make sure it clears before I post this, but I always like to ask to start with the origins. I go linear in the conversations, and how did the idea of Generation Joker even begin?
I mean, I think that is different for every single one of us, that answer, right, Clay?
Like, yeah, kind of, yeah.
Each of our beginnings with this story would be different, Sean's included. And I feel like at this point, it's also been so long since the concept of this story began that I'm not even sure I'm remembering properly.
I think he had been talking about doing this for a couple of years.
Years, like literally. I think since my book came out was when it was like the beginnings of this idea began. And how I remember it was we were watching the movie Onward, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool to have like this kind of road trip story with Jack and the kids or something like that, like a poignant. But again, I don't know if that's because like that idea had already hatched and it was like chicken or the, I don't know. Clay, do you remember? I don't know.
I remember it sort of being on the table ever since the twins first appeared in the book. So once they were a known entity in the Harley Quinn book, I think he had kind of been kicking the idea around. And then as he was getting into White Knight Beyond, he had kind of formulated this idea to have the Joker hologram steal a Batmobile and go on a road trip with his two kids. And you know, everyone you tell that pitch to goes, "Oh, that's great. I'd love to read that." And so it was just sort of fell into the right position, time and place, that we had the opportunity to do it. And yeah, Katana and I were both drafted in to each represent one of the twins, I guess. I'm not really sure.
Kind of, I don't know. Although I feel like I'm more, maybe we're both more of the same twin. What twin do you feel like you connect most with?
Ooh, next question.
Oh
Yeah.
boy. What twin do I feel like I connect with?
Or maybe it's not a twin, maybe it's another.
I'll be honest with you. I think we might have the same answer, because I think we both kind of gravitated toward Bryce.
Yeah.
Because,
I'm a Bryce for sure.
Yeah, honestly, he was the one who had the biggest runway, I think, because he hadn't really been featured too much at that point. And so we kind of, when we started kicking ideas around, we kind of kept coming back to how do we make sure that he is front and center in the story and doesn't just kind of get pushed to the side.
Yeah, like he was like the forgotten twin through Beyond. No,
yeah.
Sean, if you're listening.
So is Sean then Jackie? The rebel? Yeah.
I would say
no hesitation.
I mean, or he's like grumpy old man Bruce.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go.
Right? Like I think he might be closer to old man Bruce, but I think he to think of himself as Jackie, like
as Jackie. Gotcha. I think I'm always such a sucker for, the creation process of a story. I like to know after reading it and stuff. I like to know the behind the scenes, the origins, the art, and all of that stuff. What I think is really interesting with this project itself is, in which I thought that it was 6 issues. Is it 6 issues?
Mm-hmm.
Going to be 6. Yeah. Okay. I don't remember if I was looking it up to confirm, and I couldn't find it anywhere of how long. And I'm like, I swore it was 6 issues. But what's cool about this experience is that it's 2 writers, it's co-writers, and so there's kind of a lot to unpack there, I think, of how the development of this story, and how you two work together, how much Sean oversees it, or if he doesn't because he just trusts you both, because obviously he's pretty close to both of you in the comic world and privately. But how do you guys work together? How did you at the beginning, throughout, and all of that?
Well, it was interesting because I had never really written something as collaboratively as I have with this before. And so I wasn't totally sure what it was going to be like, especially because when we had started kicking around the ideas and kind of breaking the story and stuff, we were all kind of coming at it from different kind of points of view. But even there, I could tell that Katana and I were kind of on the same page about the stuff that we wanted to get into. And once we started actually writing scripts and actually sitting down and hashing stuff out, I found it to be very easy. And I feel like we were both on the same page and managed to really kind of form into a singular unit and move forward like that. I hope that was the same for you.
Yeah, I feel very similar. So like the process in the beginning was kind of outlining the story and sort of what each issue would accomplish and what plot progressions would happen for every issue. And I would say Sean was pretty hands-on at that juncture, right, Clay?
Yeah.
Like that was sort of the piece of it that he worked with us more consistently to come up with sort of the general mold of what the story would look like. And then once that was down, and part of it was also leaving a little bit of freedom within that mold of, for any writer out there who's listening, you also know, like you can outline all you want, but at the end of the day, sometimes the characters just decide to do something else while you're writing, or it just doesn't fit right. So like we still needed that freedom to work within, like the clay couldn't harden yet of the outline. Like we had to be able to still mold it. And then the scripting process, I would say Sean was pretty hands off, right? Like the scripting was pretty much
for the most part,
in play,
yeah,
putting the draft together, and then each script would go to the editors and to Sean in like a different, chronological order, and we'd tighten it from there. But I found, as someone who comes from a prose background, co-writing, I have completely taken to, and I would co-write every single thing in my career from now on. It's so nice to have someone that you can just rely on to be like, I'm having a hard time right now. What about, like, what do you think for this scene? Or vice versa. Like, I know there were multiple scenes and the issues that one or both of us were like, tagging you in, buddy. Like,
yeah. There were, I was surprised at how easily we could kind of pass it back and forth, because there were some scenes where I would kind of break down the panels, but not really be totally clued into what it needed dialogue wise. And I would kind of send it to her and she would fill it in and I'd be like, great, this is awesome. Excellent. Moving on. So.
And yeah, I think one of the, like, I would imagine co-writing is not always this easy. And I think what really works in this scenario is that we each bring very different things to the table. You know, Clay is like really good at the elements of like thick storytelling and getting to the heart of what the theme is and sticking to that. Like you're really good at like seeing the entire linear process. And I think my strengths lie more in like the relationships of the characters and like the emotions, and coming from an acting background as well, like dialogue tends to be something to a fault that I do too much of in books. I like all the dialogue. So usually I'm getting like red marks slashed through a lot of my words, but that's okay.
So Clay, with you having, so she said that she'd had a, you know, like a prose background, you having a comic book background, did this open up this way of sharing, you know, writing duties with comic book background? Did you benefit a lot out of that?
Yeah, I would say I did, because again, it's something I hadn't ever done before. And, you know, writing is a very solitary endeavor for the most part. And so having somebody else there that you can really bounce stuff off of in its most ugly form and refine is very helpful, because, you know, that's the thing that's frustrating about any artistic pursuit, writing especially, I think, is usually when you send off a draft of something to an editor, that's the first time they're reading it, but that's probably like the 8th time you've worked it over. And so that's why when someone tears it apart, it hurts so much, because that wasn't your first draft. That was your 8th draft just being seen for the first time. And so having someone else there who can really kind of work through those first handful of ideas and piecing things together was very helpful.
I think that's a really interesting point, that it's not, all right, Clay, write this in 10 minutes and pass it on. And I mean, it varies to how long something's been with you, and to give it to someone else, it's beneficial because you're passing it along to Katana to read, and it's like, I can finally get another opinion on this. But you don't know, you hope you wrote something good, and it's not like, oh, I hope this isn't, you know, crap.
And then
because then it could hurt.
And then in this case, when you do eventually pass it in and it gets torn apart, you have someone else to go, they don't know what they're talking about.
Yeah, you definitely have that commiserating partner.
Were there any, I can't imagine, you know, hard guidelines, but within the universe of the White Knight universe, were there any guidelines that Sean had kind of laid out, or maybe that you both already just kind of knew by taking on the project?
I would say the thing that's interesting about this book is it involves characters that were pretty much only very briefly brought up in Sean's book. But there's characters that he has future plans for. And so we kind of had to navigate what Diana Prince and Jon Stewart are going to look like without, we didn't have, I don't know how to put this. We could try anything, but not anything would fly, if that makes sense. So, because he has kind of an idea of what he wants to do with them. And so as we were using them for our purposes, if that didn't jive with his intentions or conceptions of those characters, we would kind of have to reassess and adjust a little bit, which is fine because that's it's his prerogative. But,
yeah, I would even venture to say Prince and Stuart were the two characters we consistently had the hardest time
yes,
with in every issue. Like really getting them to be the vision and stick with the vision that will be in the future of White Knight.
Because of in the story, physical things they did, physical things they said, or just character development itself?
Well, it's they occupy a very specific place in the story and kind of a specific function, and I don't think it's spoiling anything to say they're kind of an antagonistic force. They are, once the kids get on the road, Prince and Stuart are there to chase them down and capture them and return them, and finding the right tenor for that seemed to be difficult because we didn't want to push them too far into being antagonists where you wouldn't like them, but at the same time they also have to do something that presents an obstacle. So we kind of really had to navigate some twists and turns as far as how to dial those two in.
I feel like that is a pretty tough slippery slope, because anybody who's finished reading Beyond the White Knight, you can imagine that those two characters that you're just talking about are going to have a pretty important piece down the road. And so, yeah, I think this could serve as a really nice way of giving them some character development. And then on the other side of the two main characters I'd say of Jackie and Bryce, were introduced in your Harley Quinn book. But I mean, they were infants. It's not like they said anything, got to do much.
Really. Not
sort
yet.
Yeah, not yet. And so, I mean, Jackie got more in Beyond than Bryce did, but still, not a ton. So I think this paves the way for those two characters to give some substance. And I know that I think I saw in the initial release, Katana, that you'd said that it kind of felt like you're revisiting your babiys.
I feel very attached to those twins, probably to an unhealthy degree.
Okay.
I have very strong feelings whenever Sean writes them into Beyond. I'm like, don't do that to Jackie.
Yeah.
Her. That's my girl. But yeah, I have unhealthy attachments there.
So with the unhealthy attachments, I guess, what did you? I know it's hard to say because it'd be easier to ask questions if this was like the whole series is out. So I definitely, hey,
into
that's
the
Sean
podcast.
Murphy.
Nice talking about me. Don't listen to anything she says.
Do you identify more as Jackie or Old Man Bruce?
Which twin? Yeah, Jackie Bryce or Old Man Bruce do you identify more as?
Old Man Bruce, because he's
Old Man Bruce.
Old school and angry and not good at communicating sometimes.
Oh, jeez. I thought I'd just say because he likes cars, but okay, we'll go that route.
That's true.
Nice cameo. I don't know the route I was going with. It was something with the twins. The twins, cool. I said, did you have, I guess, an idea, since you're so close to them, the unhealthy attachment to them, what you wanted to accomplish with those two, just on a character level with the two, I guess, without spoiling? And I know that could maybe be really tricky because I have no idea where this series is going. So
that is tricky to answer.
Yeah, okay.
But
next question.
No. I think I can kind of step around some of these
okay.
landmines. So way back in the day when we were working on the Harley book, there was a lot of talk, and I think that this is pretty commonplace, like that there are twins. One is going to be more like Harley and one is going to be more like Jack. Like that was, we kind of played upon that with like their eye color being like they each had one eye color of Jack's. But back in Harley, we didn't know which would be which. We were really just kind of, all we knew was that one is going to be more kind of Harley centric in their personalities and one would be more Jack/Joker in their personalities. And there was a lot of back and forth conversations about who should be who in in that emulation. And so I think that is maybe why I feel this attachment, because I spent a lot of time discussing what they will grow to be and who they will grow into. If that
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, it does. Definitely does.
Clay, do you have an unhealthy attachment to any of these characters?
No, I wanted to put them through as many horrible paces and trials as we possibly could. The thing that I had said before is when they first pitched the idea to me about, okay, it's the Joker hologram and the kids take off in this thing, and I said, okay, how quickly can we break the hologram? Because I wanted to put the kids, throw them into the deep end. But that was in the early days when we were kicking things around. I basically threw as many insane ideas at the wall as possible, and I'm shocked at how many of them actually stuck.
That'd have been my follow-up. Did they stick? Will they stand out as we move along with each issue and read it as fans? Will we be able to identify? Oh, I think that was one of Clay's a Clay bomb.
There's one in particular. As we come towards the end of the story, that is definitely one of them.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'll keep my eyes open.
I mean, I don't know. I might be wrong. I think most people, at least people who've met Clay and myself and have talked with us at shows or whatever, I think in reading this book, they will be able to determine okay, that was Clay's idea. That was Katana's idea. I think that as people get to know us, it'll be easier to kind of pinpoint that. But the thing is, even if the concepts were one of our ideas, that doesn't necessarily mean that person wrote that scene either.
Right, sure.
I feel even we do kind of break up who writes what scene, but then we both get our paws all over each other's.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of it, you really can't even tell who wrote what scene, because I've done dialogue in Clay's and vice versa. And
yeah. And if you go into it and you guess wrong, then I guess we did our job. So
yeah.
Oh, good. Well, there you go. So you were both heavily involved in each issue's script.
Oh yeah. Yep.
That's cool. Because I know I've heard of some of where, say, if it's an 8 issue, it's oh yeah, this person did the first 4, the other one did the last 4, or it was back and forth or something. So this was a true collaboration throughout.
I think
about doing that.
Yeah, I think there was some talk early on about maybe switching off issue to issue, but at least for me, I'm glad we didn't do that, because I think the two of us really needed to be on the same page, and I would not have enjoyed a sort of relay race kind of baton passing thing where you what's done is done. Okay, now you have to pick up and move on from here, and then the same thing. I think that would just get really frustrating ultimately.
Yeah, I'm glad we ended up doing it the way we did it as well. And I think it was kind of by chance that it happened that way, because if I recall, by the time it got greenlit, they were like, "Can you get us a script tomorrow?" It was, I mean, it was
pretty quick,
dramatic, but it was we had to turn in issue 1 very quickly, and there really wasn't time for one person to write. I think the first issue is 24 pages, not 22.
I think so, 24 or 25,
24 or 20, something like that. But there just wasn't even time for one person to write a whole issue. So we both just were all right, I'll do this scene, you do that scene, I do that, blah, 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 and we churned that thing out really quickly. And I think by that point we were well, that worked.
Wow, look at that. It worked.
Again, it really takes some of the pressure off having someone else to bounce it off with, because the writing that I've done myself, I end up you kind of sit and you stew with stuff for a long time, and you're kind of chipping away and hacking away, and it's all just sort of rolling around in your own head. And here to be able to just toss it back and forth and see what works and really kind of mold it as it's coming out was really great.
Yeah.
To give sort of a timeline, I guess, and out of genuine curiosity, that first script being do you remember, not day and time, but roughly when that first script was turned in?
Oh geez. Was it last year?
Yes.
Been, right? Yeah.
It was last year. I think it was August.
August?
Okay. Yeah. I think Mirko started drawing like end of August.
So here we are. Okay.
It was
San
after San Diego.
We went to San Diego, and that was pretty much when, like, at dinner, they were like, greenlit.
Right.
And we were like, oh, okay. We can't do anything about that now. We're in San Diego.
It's kind of sad. I'm sitting here, I'm counting, and I'm like, here we are 9 months after that first script being turned in, and then the first issue's, coming out. So is the entire story written? All 6 issues written?
We have one left. We have
one left.
Yeah.
The finale.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So, no pressure. I mean, we haven't even read it yet, but hey, no pressure. Hope you stick the landing.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I mean, at the very least, it's gonna be wild. So,
is that kind of strange for you both at this point? Of here you are, less than a week than before the first issue even comes out, and you're working on the final, or is it maybe good to get it all done before you get to have reviews maybe skew your opinion or something?
I don't really know. I have this is the first series that I've worked on of more than 2 issues that will be under that kind of a microscope. So I'll be interested to see how that affects things I mean, the thing is, right, we're right at the end, so it's not like if the end of issue 2 comes out and reviews are like, we don't really like this. It's not like we could change anything at that point,
Yeah.
It's so I guess it's a blessing and a curse where you have to kind of you either have to let it bother you or just go along and do what you're going to do.
Yeah, I like to have pretty much the whole thing done personally, because I like that as you're kind of crafting the end, if something's not, the puzzle piece isn't quite fitting, there's still time. I mean, not necessarily to go back and change art or whatever, but like having it mapped out to that degree, I find helpful to not kind of write yourself into a corner. And it's funny because I'm the type of person who, when comps come in, I get really anxious and I don't want to read my comp because what can I do if I'm like, oh, that's a typo, or well, nothing we can do about that now. Whereas Sean's personality, and I don't know yours, Clay, but Sean will like read every issue when it comes in cover to cover, and that is just not what I do.
Yeah, I like to read them just because you never. I've noticed in working in comics, the books read different at every single stage of production. So the way it reads on the written page is always going to feel different than the way it reads once you see the art, and that's going to be different once you see the letters in the art. And then even there, sometimes coloring can change the perception of how it reads. And then, even the difference between reading it on a screen and reading in your hands, it's a different experience, I think. And I try to take from it what I can to use for the next one, to see what worked, what did, like for instance, this first issue, we have to set the table, and there's a lot of people coming to dinner. Let's put it that way. And so we have a lot of stuff we have to get through. I mean, to the point when we were writing it, we were like, can we get like 3 more pages? Because I don't think we can do this in 22 pages. And we got our comps, and my girlfriend was reading it and flipping through it, and I just happened to catch a page out of the corner of my eye, and I said, holy crap, there's a lot of dialogue on that page. And it's one of those things that doesn't, you don't really realize how things play until you see the finished product. And so I personally find it important to kind of just look at things and see, okay, well, this could have been changed a little bit. And it's nothing you can do about it now with the thing you're holding in your hands, obviously, but I like to think of it as something I can use for the next project.
Well, I feel like, writers are artists as well. Artists are artists, but anybody who creates something, I feel like you're never done if you keep going back, because then you start to think of alterations. So I almost feel like, Katana, you're avoiding that completely by not reading it all over. Clay, I've been in your situation with stuff that I've done before, and then it's been some time, and then I go back to it, and it's like I'm almost cringe because it very much like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's
No,
shown off in front of others, and I'm like, looking at everybody else judging my work, and I'm like, it's tough to do.
I haven't run into this yet with writing, but when I do art, my process is when I start the page, I feel good about it. Halfway through, I think it's the worst thing I've ever drawn. Then I finish it and I think, okay, this came out pretty good. And then I scan it and then I look at it in the computer, go, okay, this is terrible. And then I send it in and then I see it in print and I go, all right, this is pretty good. And then the next time I pick it up, I go, this is the worst thing I've ever drawn. So it's a constant thing where you're always going to be your own worst critic. And
that literally happens with my book writing too, Clay. Like I'm writing a draft and I'm writing it. I'm like, God, I'm a genius. This is perfect. And then I get to the next editing stage and I'm like, oh my God, I should quit. This is like, what am I doing with it? And then I read it again and I'm like, actually, this isn't so bad. And like by the time it publishes, and the difference between me and Clay is I stop reading when I hit that point. When I hit the point, like, hey, this is a decent product. I'm happy with it. I don't go back and read it again. Now, I will go through and read like all the issues when they're out, when all of them are out. That's when I like sit down and I read them through, usually because at that point it's going to go to trade. So at that point, I'm like, I can fix things, right? Like, I can fix this before it goes into print as a trade or a hardcover. And that's when I'll sit down and read it.
Yeah. I usually have a moment, like maybe 6 months later, where I flip through something and I go, yeah, that's pretty good. And that's about the best I can ask for.
I thought you were going to say that's about the best I can say about myself. Yeah, that's pretty good. Because you are your harshest critic. As you just said, we will just tear ourselves apart. It's ruthless. Maybe this is a terrible question. But aside from like aside from like the obvious, so I mean, Clay, you referenced about how you did you've done 2 issues in this universe with the Red Hood story. Katana, you did 6 issues with Harley Quinn. What's like truly instantly different here, aside from obviously it's a new story, you guys are collaborating instead of working on your own? Is there anything that really stood out? I can think of one in particular for you, Clay, but I'll let you guys answer before I say something.
Anything that's completely different as far as you're saying, as far as the world of the book goes, the White Knight universe?
However you take that question. Like I said, it might have been a terrible question.
Well, can you give me your example that you have? So
you created a new character
oh, sure.
You created a new character, like flat out just a new character, wasn't seen, mentioned prior to. And it seems like that character is going at the end of your 2 issues, that character wasn't just for your 2 issues and then that's it, never heard from again. Popped up again and beyond, and fair to say might show up Generation Joker or anything past that.
Well, I will say with that character in particular, I was very happy to be able to use her as a 1-page one-off joke. Because that was one thing I made sure to get in there, because I don't know, I just like seeing those 2 characters together. I thought it would be a good 1-page joke. But yeah, I think what's about this is, in Sean's books, he has a tendency to close the door on a lot of characters. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And we are in a certain position with this book where we are far enough into the future and far enough removed from the events of his books that we actually have quite a bit of freedom as far as who can show up, what form they might take, anything like that. So I actually found it to be less restrictive in that way than I was expecting.
Okay.
Because of the sort of unique ways we found around that to kind of still play with the iconography, even though it might not appear the way that you would expect usually in a Batman book.
Well, thanks for making it sound like it wasn't a terrible question. It wasn't a good one though. Dana, do you have any kind of response?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's a more simple answer in that for me this takes place in the future.
Mhm.
Batman Beyond is kind of like a more futuristic setting just by its nature. I would it be considered sci-fi, Clay?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean,
And then
well, Batman Beyond, yes. I would say our book, yeah. I mean, it's got a AI
yeah,
ghost
I mean,
in it,
it's
so
not, it's like these little nods to sci-fi, but like I am not someone who specializes in sci-fi.
Mhm.
It's not something I consume as a reader very often. It doesn't mean I don't like it. Like when I read some sci-fi and watch sci-fi, there are times I really enjoy it. But it's definitely not a genre that I seek out myself. And I was very nervous and intimidated to step into a world that was like futuristic or
Mhm.
sci-fi, quote unquote. And I had also just come from writing the book for Dynamite called Cherish, which is very sci-fi. And I was like, why are you choosing me for this? This is very weird. I am not a
Sounds
sci-fi.
like you love sci-fi. That's what I'm
Right.
hearing.
Like it's my new brand.
show
Just
me
Yeah.
Blade Runner tattooed.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, that was like a big difference between Harley and walking
Yeah.
into Generation Joker. It was like this big gap in time, and kind of a whole new Gotham and a whole new world that I had not been a part of as a writer yet.
Mhm.
Mm.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, as a fan, there was excitement and somewhat trepidation on my end just because I don't love Batman Beyond. Sci-fi is not like one of my favorite genres and everything. And then, but then it was like everything that had come so far in the White Knight universe, I've been such a fan of. So I'm like, cool, this is kind of uncharted territory. It's really, feeling different. I think Generation Joker, just by the first issue, I think it's kind of a good balance of it does feel futuristic continuation beyond, but also there's elements of it that I felt were pretty grounded and not um taking you fully of like, oh yeah, this is in 2099 or something like that. So it's a good balance, I think. How
Well,
about go
if
ahead.
I could just kind of build on that for a second. The thing that's kind of unique about this is that it does take place at the furthest point in the future timeline as we've gotten in this universe,
Hmm.
but it's very much about the past because Jack's entire point here is he's trying to show his kids who he was and that he was more than just the Joker. And so what that entails is sort of taking them to places from his past that he thinks are going to impart that knowledge, but so many things have changed because we are in the future that they don't roll out the way he thinks they're going to. And so I did find myself as we were writing it kind of at certain points almost forgetting this was in the Batman Beyond universe because
Hmm.
we were playing so much with stuff that had happened previously.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Nice.
doesn't have that like super futuristic sci-fi feel because you're right. Like we are very much delving into that past. And Jack's never really lived in this
Yeah,
timeline.
Right. Yeah.
that's a fresh approach to the character of Joker, which I think the bringing Joker back from the dead was probably like the trippiest and almost most fun thing about Beyond was including him in the way that Sean did. And then a continuation here is also cool because I don't think it's anything about you haven't changed the character. It's just feels like unexplored territory for the character of the Joker before pre-Joker as Jack Napier. So I think that aspect is also like a fun, I don't know if you want to say like plot B, whereas plot A are Jackie and Bryce, and then plot B I think is just this whole Jack Napier pre-Joker aspect that I'm so far issue 1. As far as I know, issue 2 might be terrible. I don't know. We'll see. But
We'll find out.
that part to me is a lot of fun. I want to move on to the artist, Mirka Andolfo. I hope I pronounced the name correctly. What goes into finding an artist? Are you guys involved in that in any way, or is Sean the one who heads that mission?
I mean, we've really only done this with an artist that's not Sean
This will
3,
be the
4. If we count Klaus.
yeah, it'll be the 4th time if you count Klaus. Yeah.
Um, I mean, the finding Mirka was, I mean, I was there for it because I was at the convention where we met her
Mm-hmm.
and kind of saw her work and was introduced to her work. But I think, yeah, ultimately that's a Sean call, I would say.
Yeah, that's how it was with Red Hood. Is Sean brought Simone in on that one, and I actually I was not familiar with Mirka's work when Sean brought her stuff to me, and it's fantastic. It's really great.
Yeah.
And so I was happy to work with her because she does really, really nice work.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember like the time. So like obviously like Klaus and Sean are very close.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like a natural progression to have Klaus come on for Von Fries. And Matteo has also been a very long time friend of ours. So kind of the same thing. Like it just was easy and natural bringing him on. Simone was maybe the first person that was sort of out of that orbit.
Mm-hmm.
I think so. My memory is that Sean had his eye on Mirka's work even before Red Hood, because I think I had heard her name. He had been talking about wanting to work with her right from the beginning when these sort of spin-off things had started gestating.
When did Red Hood come out? Do you know? Like
that was August of last year. So
okay.
it was the week after San Diego. I remember that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm having a very hard time remembering as well. But what I think works so well with Mirka's art in this book is like she has this kind of cool like digital, I'm not an artist, I'm not a visual artist, but like there's this very like pixelated feel when she does Jack, and like she has a lot of great sharp angles. Like it just feels like it lends itself very well.
Yeah.
That kind of like subconscious theme that we're going for. Like there's a lot of undertones that she adds to the storytelling just with her choices in art. And then on top of that, having, is this a spoiler? Hold on. Let me think before I talk. I like she draws women beautifully, and like there's just this like innocence too that she brings to the table when she draws Jackie and Bryce, like this very sweet like loving innocence between the twins that I think that she's been such a valuable asset in not just drawing what we write, but really helping craft those words in her own way, obviously.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please go.
She has a real playfulness to her work too that I think adds a lot to Jackie and Bryce, because I mean this is, at the end of the day, it's a story more or less through their point of view, and so to have that sort of more I don't mean animated in cartoon language, but it's more of an animated feel to the expressions on the characters and the way that they act and are depicted, I think goes a long way to help beef up that the idea that this is a story about two kids.
Yeah.
Are you both getting I'm gonna say maybe images from her as she completes pages, or not until the issue's completed?
Yeah, she'll send us layouts, and then we all kind of get together and look at the layouts and give some notes, and then she'll go back and then she'll send her pages in as she finishes them.
Yeah, I'd say like we get 1 to 2 pages kind of trickling in
at a time. Yeah.
At a time. Yeah.
Is that pretty exciting on your guys' end then? Ooh, got a new email. Let's open it up. I know it's a page.
Yeah, I'm really bad at so I'm a very chronological thinker. It's probably, I would consider one of my faults that like I have a really hard time jumping from scene to scene if it's not in the correct order. So I always feel really bad because if she sends in a page, but it's like it's page 12 of the book, but I haven't seen page 11 yet. I'm like, I can't even look at this yet. Like my brain can't compute this. it's always exciting to see the art come to life though. And
Yeah.
like watch your words literally start dancing before your eyes is an amazing feeling.
Yeah, it's always nice to see it once I can find it, because we end up having 14 different email threads going at the same time for various issues, and it's just, I don't know.
Well, I'll give credit to all involved on the, I mean, I don't know if you can count them as spin-off books, but like Von Freeze, Harley Quinn, Red Hood, and this one too, is obviously they have different artists that have their own look, an established look, but yet somehow there is like a through line of it totally fits with like within the same universe too. It's never so jarring that it's like, wow, this is extreme. Like obviously it's different. Does that make sense? Of like, yeah, it's different, but it totally works. This completely fits like the next, like Generation Joker. This is the next chapter of the story, of the big story. And I think that works.
Yeah, and I think that is, again, like very mindful choices for whose art really reflects the tone of each story. So
Yeah.
like Klaus being on Von Freeze, you know, Von Freeze was like a massive flashback. And so it's even okay that that style of art has kind of a different or like an old-timey feel to it. And then like Clay was saying, like Mirka being on this, she doesn't have a style anything like Sean's. Like her style is way different, but the book is so different within this world. Like I love Clay's idea, or how he pointed out that this is like really from the kid's point of view, and she brings that innocence and playfulness to that point of view. And so it doesn't feel jarring to not be looking at Sean's work. Because actually Sean's art on this book, sorry, I love you, would be really, I think, not the right fit. Like Sean's art on this book, I think wouldn't fit the tone of it. And yeah, and like same, Mateo had this Don Bluth style that was like perfect for Harley Quinn. And his was probably the closest in like kind of lacing and weaving together with what Sean's style is. But
yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Maybe let's see. As we inch toward wrapping up here, I was curious of asking each of you of if you could do anything or could have done anything within the White Knight universe. Is there something that stands out? No spoilers, not talking about this book, but this could be as much as something that Sean did in, you know, the original White Knight series. You would have loved to have done this part, or something that's not even been talked about. You would love to go down this path and explore this or something. Is there anything each of you would like to do?
Well, how much time do you have? No.
4 hours, remember? We're going 4 hours.
At the risk of starting another erroneously attributed Wikipedia article,
Awesome.
I have been pushing, I've been wanting to get Catwoman on the scene for multiple years. And it just hasn't worked out. And, you know, she's the kind of character where it's really tough to just drop her in, because she is such a co-lead in a lot of senses, when many senses when in the same story as Batman. It's very difficult to just sort of drop her into the background. And it might happen, it might not, I don't know. Unfortunately, I'm not holding my breath. I don't think any of us are, but it's something that I wanted to get on the page for a while, and because I've always thought she's kind of a glaring omission from the universe.
Gotcha. How about you, Katana? Anything?
So the thing that I really wanted to do back in the day, which I'm pretty sure will never happen, and also is probably why I was like, no, don't write it 10 years in the
yeah, that really screwed both of us pretty hard.
did. I so wanted to, after Harley, have a little like spin-off, I don't know, series or mini called Harley Noir, where Harley, living in the Batcave, basically, like after her house burned down, Bruce gave her the keys to his townhouse because he was in jail. And I really wanted to do this like very cute mini series of Harley Noir where she was just sort of a PI, trying to go the like no longer being a villain route, but she didn't quite fit working with you know, the GTO. And that was sort of what Harley was setting up for, was this mini like spin-off series of Harley Noir. And And then it jumped in the future, and I was like, well, okay, I don't know how we can do that now, unless it's just a weird flashback. And like, yeah, so that was what I still think about my ideas for that series to this day.
I think never say never, because the timeline of this universe has, White Knight and Curse and Harley Quinn are like here. There's a gap like this. Then it's Beyond and Generation Joker. There's tons of years before that could fit Catwoman. There's that gap, that 10-year gap, Katana, that could be Harley Noir. And then Clay, some point you can fit in a Condiment King story. So,
Oh, hell yeah.
Now
we're talking.
Right.
No, there's
that's what they want.
There's a character that Sean and I kind of facetiously created on our Batman podcast, the Badass podcast.
Mm-hmm.
And his name's the Brand Manager. And he came out of this joke we had where we kept talking about how these characters kept showing up on Batman the Animated Series as villains, and immediately had an entire custom wardrobe and henchmen and branded henchmen. So there must be someone in Gotham who these bad guys go to, and they get the package where, this one guy comes in and the brand manager says, okay, so you're really into mustard and ketchup. All right, I got the perfect idea for you. And so, and I desperately tried to get him into Red Hood, but he didn't make it. And there wasn't a room for him in Generation Joker. I don't even think I tried. I should have, but I didn't.
I don't recall this at all, so I don't think.
No, I didn't pitch for him in Generation Joker, but he is someone who Sean and I have joked about trying to get him in on the page in some form. So maybe sometime.
Okay. Hear me out, because this can totally work, and it'll bring it everything in. Brand Manager. So I don't know if, I'm sure you're aware that I think Paul Dini created a character called the Carpenter.
I have heard of the Carpenter. Yes.
The Carpenter was basically it's a carpenter who the villains in Gotham hire to create their extravagant layers, their themed layers and everything. It's a fun, not completely serious character, just kind of fun, pops up here and there.
Sure.
Seems similar to the Brand Manager.
Well, I'll tell you what the difference is.
Close. Well, not that you're ripping off or anything. It's just like, it's not that far out of possibility, Clay.
Oh, no.
It's right in line with
he's
Carpenter.
A completely viable character. Don't get me wrong. No, we just need to find a way to get him in. No, the difference is the Brand Manager, the way he makes his money legitimately. He has a legitimate business. He owns all the trademarks to the bat symbol, because Bruce Wayne isn't going to file copyright or trademark for the bat symbol. So every piece of licensing that you see with a bat symbol on it, he gets money from. And he also owns all the real estate where all of these villains have their lairs. So anytime Batman or the GTO shows up and blows the shit out of them, he ends up getting insurance money because he actually technically owns that building.
You see, and it would be such a lesson in copyright infringement and trademarking that we would all learn as well. And how it relates now, where you can come in, Katana, is it's not too far. I feel like by extension, he has some similarities to the producer from your Harley Quinn story, this Brand Manager guy, a very theatrical and creating a whole show. So like, I don't know. I think all this sounds viable. It's all possible. The White Knight universe is going to go on for decades. I can feel. I mean,
eight issue Brand Manager series next year.
Batman White Knight presents the Brand Manager.
It's just 250 pages of filing paperwork.
Some website's going to hear that and they're going to be like, exclusive. Clay McCormack and Tana Collins creating.
So yeah.
I mean, that perfectly tees up, and I can let this be our last question. Let you guys go. That, like, what is it that each of you think? What is it about? I guess about White Knight in itself that has been so successful and keeps it such a draw, because it is a draw as soon as it's announced of, hey, a new series. White Knight universe continues with a spinoff series, Generation Joker. So what is it about White Knight that has been so refreshing for comic fans and Batman fans?
I think it's a large part to do with anything really can happen. And Sean presents the characters in a familiar way, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be exactly the way that you remember them.
Yeah.
And so it leaves the door open to a lot of pretty interesting takes on characters and motivations and concepts that are just allow a little bit more freedom to play around than I think you do in a mainline book where you're relying on 60 70 years of continuity, or well, whenever the last crisis was, anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tricky question to answer. I mean, I don't want to just point out how great Sean's universe is either, but there's so many.
We all know.
Great stories. Out there,
we all know it's great.
But I would say, like, as someone who I like reading comics, I enjoy them, but I'm not the avid reader that probably a lot of your listeners are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not reading multiple runs of things. I just sort of like to pick up what looks good. And I think what makes White Knight, at least thus far, so successful is there's a lot of entry points. You can pick up, you can start at the beginning with number 1, White Knight, and read that and curse and feel satisfied in stopping. You could also pretty much pick up Harley and read that as a one-shot, and pretty clearly, like, even though you might be like, wait, what? Joker's dead? But for the most part, like, it reads as like its own story. Beyond kind of the same thing, like, you could just pick that up and be right there. And like, I like that there's that multiple entry points, that someone who wanted to read Generation Joker on its own, you could do that. Yeah. Or you could start at Beyond and read that in Generation Joker, and it makes perfect sense. Yeah, so that's sort of a very simplified answer, but
I think both of you bring up really good points that I think are very apt and I think are very true. So one issue in, I think this is a continuation of that, like the great run that White Knight has. Was no pressure, right, to live up to this world that everybody really enjoys. I want to thank you both, though, very much for coming on to talk about this. I hope the book does well. I think it will. And I just, I appreciate you sitting and talking to me. Do each of you want to plug away of where people can follow you while this book unveils and they can see what other stuff you're up to?
Katana.
Sure. Well, thank you for having us. It was really fun chatting, and it was really nice meeting you in Chicago.
Yeah.
You can follow me on Instagram at Katana Collins. I am also on TikTok, also at Katana Collins. And I also have a Patreon page for those who want the inside scoops on things.
Great. And I'm on Instagram and Twitter at McCormack414. And Sean and I do a Batman podcast. We've been working our way through the animated series, and we're currently in the 2nd season of Batman Beyond. It's pretty much like 10 minutes of episode talk and then like an hour-long tangent about something in the comics business. So
I was going to say, I do love the detours you guys do take for like a half hour, 45 minutes, but it is something created by or connected by extension to comic books and stuff. And that's always, you don't know when it's coming, but it's coming. And it's fun to listen to.
I can tell you that much. But that's called the Batass Podcast, the BATTASS podcast. And you should be able to find that wherever fine podcasts are sold.
I've listened. It's fun. So
thank you.
Thank you both again for joining.
Thank you.
Yes.